She yelled at him, accused him, threatened to have him removed. But when this teenager calmly dialed his uncle, the flight didn't just pause, it never took off. Malik Torrance wasn't looking for attention. At 16, his idea of a perfect trip was one with no complications. Just get on the plane, sit down, pull out his playlist and zone out until landing. But that morning at Sacramento International Airport, something felt a little off from the start. Not in the dramatic way people usually tell stories, just weird looks, unspoken tension, a flight gate agent who didn't smile back. Still, Malik stayed polite, like his grandmother had taught him. "Don't give people reasons to label you," she'd always said. "Be better than what they expect." He had just spent a quiet week with her in Reading. She was recovering from knee surgery, and he'd helped her with groceries, her garden, and learning how to use the new remote. Nothing flashy, just being present. The kind of visit that made his mom proud. His flight back to Atlanta had a layover in Phoenix, and this leg, Sacramento to Phoenix, was the short one. But it was about to stretch longer than he could have imagined. As he stepped onto the plane, boarding pass in hand, Malik glanced at his seat, 14A, a window seat. Perfect. He liked watching the takeoff, but when he reached row 14, there was already a man in 14A, headphones on, half asleep. Malik hesitated for a second, double-checked his ticket, then turned around. A flight attendant was walking down the aisle toward him. She looked around 50, with tightly pinned blonde hair and a silver-winged name tag that read T. Delacroix. "Excuse me, ma'am," Malik said, voice steady. "I think there's someone in my seat. I'm 14A. She didn't even glance at his ticket. "That's not your seat," she snapped. "You're supposed to be in the back." He blinked. "No, I was assigned 14A by the app. There was a switch at the gate. You can check." She cut him off, raising her voice. "Don't talk back. I don't care what some app says. You go sit where you're told." Passengers nearby looked up. One man raised an eyebrow. A woman clutched her bag closer. No one said anything. Malik took a breath. He'd been in awkward spots before, but this felt different. Not just dismissive, like she didn't even see him as a person, like he was just a problem to be moved. "Please," he said again, calmly. "I think there's a mix-up. Can you scan the ticket? I said go sit in the back, or I'll have you removed." She snapped. Her voice was loud now. Too loud. He looked around. Faces were watching. Phones were out. But still, silence. One kid across the aisle stared wide-eyed. An older woman whispered to the man beside her. Malik's heart was pounding. Not from fear, from shame and frustration. He wasn't doing anything wrong. He knew that. But why did it suddenly feel like he had to defend his right to even be there? He pulled out his phone, opened the airline app, and held it up. "It says 14A, he said, showing her the screen. Delacroix didn't look. She crossed her arms and stepped closer. "Are you refusing to comply with a crew member's instruction? Because that's a federal offense." That's when something clicked inside Malik. Not anger, just resolve. He reached into his backpack, pulled out his phone again, and dialed. "Uncle X," he said when the call picked up. "I need you." But the second that call connected, the entire tone of the flight started to shift. "Tell me everything," Xavier Torrance said through the phone, his voice direct, calm, and already in motion. Malik didn't have to say much. Just the basics. "She's yelling. Told me to sit in the back. Won't check my boarding pass. People are watching. I didn't raise my voice once." From the row behind him, someone muttered, "Just let the kid sit down already." Malik stayed standing, phone in one hand, boarding pass in the other. Flight attendant T. Delacroix took a step forward like she was preparing for a showdown. "Is that a phone call?" she asked sharply. Malik nodded. "You're not allowed to use your phone during boarding. Hang up." He didn't even flinch. "I'm speaking with my attorney." That stopped her for a second. Only a second. "Who's your attorney?" she asked, her tone thick with doubt, like she was trying to catch him bluffing. Xavier spoke up through the speaker. "Xavier Torrance, Civil Rights Division. You might want to pause before you escalate this any further." Delacroix's eyes narrowed, but she didn't respond directly. Instead, she turned toward the front of the plane. "Captain, I need someone removed from 14A. Passenger is non-compliant and refusing to follow orders." A low murmur rolled through the cabin. Malik heard it. Everyone heard it. Someone near the window leaned forward. "Wait! He's not even in the seat yet!" Another voice. "This isn't right. He's just standing there." A woman across the aisle finally spoke louder. "I saw it! He asked her calmly. She jumped on him." Delacroix spun around. "Ma'am, please stay out of this." "No," the woman replied. "Not this time." Malik turned slightly, holding the phone closer to his mouth. "Uncle X, people are starting to talk now. Someone's recording." "Good," Xavier said. "Tell them to keep recording. I'm contacting the airline right now. What's the flight number?" Malik read it from the placard above the seat row. "BAE 43112 to Phoenix." "Got it. Stay calm. Say nothing else to her. You've done enough." Delacroix was now talking into her own walkie, eyes darting between Malik and the front of the plane. Her voice was lower, but she glanced at Malik every few seconds like he was a ticking clock she couldn't control. And all the while, Malik stood there, not yelling, not angry, just waiting to be treated like a person. A male flight attendant approached cautiously. Older, salt and pepper hair, badge reading G. Norell. He didn't carry the same aggression. If anything, he looked uncomfortable. "Son," he said quietly, "can I see your boarding pass?" Malik handed it to him wordlessly. Norell scanned it, then looked at the screen on his device. His eyebrows jumped slightly, but he said nothing for a few seconds. Then, "You're in the right seat. There was a reassignment at the gate." Delacroix had heard it too. She moved quickly. "That can't be right. He said 14A, but the manifest still has a different name." "No," Norell interrupted, still reading. "His name is there now. It was a last-minute change. It's in the system." The silence that followed was heavier than all the muttering before it. Malik didn't say anything. He didn't smile. He didn't even look satisfied. He just stepped to the side, sat down in 14A, and kept his phone in his lap. Delacroix turned and marched toward the galley. A few passengers leaned into the aisle to catch the moment. Someone whispered, "She's going to regret that." Malik's heart was still beating fast, but he forced himself to breathe slower. He texted his uncle. "They see it now." Xavier texted back, "Good. Let me handle the rest." But even as Malik settled into his seat, the wheels were already turning behind the scenes. And this flight wasn't going anywhere just yet. Back in his office in Oakland, Xavier Torrance was already standing, pacing, Bluetooth in one ear, laptop open. His assistant, Dominique, was pulling up flight data, company contacts, legal language. Xavier didn't waste time. He never had. He'd spent years building a reputation that made institutions flinch when they heard his name. Civil rights wasn't just his field. It was personal. And this? A 16-year-old boy, his nephew, targeted before takeoff? This wasn't going to slide. "Get me a direct contact at Blue Air Legal," he told Dominique. "Now. Skip the PR line." "Already dialing," she said, headset on. Back on the plane, Malik was watching through the window, fingers still clutching his phone. His stomach had calmed a little, but his mind kept playing the moment back in loops. He wasn't angry. Not yet. Just tired. And confused. Why did it always feel like people expected him to shrink? The man sitting beside him, middle-aged, faded baseball cap, arms crossed, shifted slightly and said, without looking, "That woman's out of line." Malik glanced at him, surprised. "She came in hot for no reason," the man added. "You were polite. I saw it. Thanks," Malik said quietly. From a few rows up, someone stood. A young woman in a yellow hoodie. She spoke loudly enough for the surrounding rows to hear. "Hey, if anyone else saw what just happened, start saving your recordings. Don't delete them. The truth matters." Several phones lifted higher. Voices murmured in agreement. Up front, Delacroix was still on the intercom phone. Her tone had shifted. Lower, unsure. The pilot had been informed of a disruption, and she'd said the words non-compliant passenger more than once. But she was no longer in control of the story. The cabin had seen too much. Meanwhile, Xavier had Blue Air's legal department on the line. A junior counsel answered, sounding mildly disinterested until Xavier said his full name. That changed the tone. "This is about a passenger on BAE 4312, currently taxiing out of Sacramento," Xavier said. "My client, my nephew, Malik Torrance, was just publicly confronted, mischaracterized, and humiliated by one of your crew members, T. Delacroix. I have multiple witnesses, live recordings, and passenger confirmations. Your employee refused to verify his boarding information, attempted to relocate him without cause, and threatened federal charges." The line went quiet for a moment. Then, I'm not fully briefed on this." "No, you're not," Xavier replied. "But you will be. Because if that plane takes off with her on it, and no official intervention, your airline will be looking at a civil action before landing gear even hits the ground." The silence stretched again. "I'll notify the captain," the lawyer said, his voice clipped now. "Please hold." Back on the plane, something was clearly happening. The captain's voice came over the intercom. Calm, professional. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been advised of an issue that requires attention before departure. We'll be returning to the gate shortly. Please remain seated." A collective ripple moved through the cabin. People exchanged looks. Some were surprised. Others nodded knowingly. Malik leaned back, watching as the plane slowly pivoted away from the runway. Across the aisle, a flight attendant, not Delacroix, came to him. Younger, brown-skinned, visibly nervous. She knelt beside his row, lowered her voice. "I just want to say, I saw what happened, and I'm sorry. That shouldn't have happened to you." Malik gave a tiny nod. "Thanks." She hesitated, then added, "You handled it better than most adults would have." Malik didn't respond. He was still processing, still trying to balance between staying composed and just wanting to cry. Not from weakness, from being done with moments like this. The plane was almost back at the gate when Xavier's call buzzed through again. "She's being pulled," he said flatly. "They're not letting her fly. They know they messed up. Sit tight." But while Malik had stayed calm, the flight crew was now scrambling, and what came next would turn this delay into national headlines. As the plane rolled to a stop at the gate, the cabin lights brightened. No one was getting up yet, but the energy had shifted. You could feel it. The way passengers whispered with more purpose now, the steady hum of curiosity turning into something sharper. The door opened. 2 airport security agents stepped on board, followed closely by a Blue Air supervisor in a navy blazer. Her face was tight with urgency, eyes scanning the rows before landing on Malik. Then Delacroix. "Miss Delacroix," the supervisor said, voice clipped. "We need to speak with you at the front of the cabin." Delacroix tried to keep her expression neutral, but her mouth twitched as she stood and followed them up the aisle. As she passed Malik's row, she didn't look at him. Not once. From behind Malik, the woman in the yellow hoodie muttered, "About time." Passengers watched in silence. Some filmed, others just observed. Phones ready but not raised, waiting to see what happened next. It didn't take long. 10 minutes later, the supervisor returned, alone this time. She walked directly to Malik. "Mr. Torrance," she began, kneeling so she wasn't standing over him. "We sincerely apologize for what happened. I want you to know the flight attendant involved will not be continuing this trip. You have done nothing wrong." Malik looked her in the eye. Why did it take a phone call to be heard? The question hung there. She swallowed. Sometimes it takes one voice to wake everyone else up. Before she could say more, the captain stepped into the cabin and addressed the passengers over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We're addressing a personnel issue and will be resuming boarding shortly. If you need to stretch, you may do so now, but please stay near your assigned seats." No one moved. Everyone wanted to see what was next. The man next to Malik leaned toward him again. "You got guts, kid. I've seen grown men fold in situations like that." Malik didn't say anything back, but he appreciated the words. Then came the next twist. A flight attendant approached Malik again, this time with a seat reassignment slip. "Mr. Torrance," she said, this one older, voice softer. "We'd like to move you to seat 2A for the remainder of the flight." "First class." Malik blinked. "I'm fine here. It's not a reward," she added quickly. "It's just quieter, and we thought you might want space." He looked at her, then at the empty first-class section visible through the curtain. Part of him wanted to stay in 14A, to prove a point. But he also felt the weight of all the stares, all the quiet assumptions pressing in. He stood up. Sure, as he made his way forward, the passengers in his section didn't just watch. A few nodded, subtle, but supportive. The woman in the yellow hoodie smiled at him. A young man raised a fist at his chest, not high, just enough. He took his seat in 2A and sat still, his backpack at his feet. From this position, he could see the whole plane. It looked smaller now, more manageable, but not any simpler. Back in Oakland, Xavier watched the first viral post pop up, a video with over 15,000 views in 10 minutes. The caption read, "Teen boy wrongly accused on plane. This is what really happened." He shook his head. "They're gonna feel this one." Dominique looked up from her desk. "Want me to send an official statement?" "Not yet," he replied. "Let it simmer." But as the plane prepared for takeoff again, the real storm wasn't behind them. It was just about to hit the public eye. The moment Malik's story hit the internet, the temperature outside the plane was the least of anyone's worries. What started as a trickle of posts from scattered passengers turned into a flood within the hour. Videos, tweets, screenshots of the boarding pass app, all telling the same story from different angles. A teen wrongly accused, a flight attendant shouting, a quiet refusal to back down, and a phone call that flipped the narrative. In seat 2A, Malik didn't know how viral it had gotten yet. His phone buzzed non-stop, but he ignored it, not out of pride. He just didn't know what to say. The whole thing still didn't feel real. A flight attendant offered him water. He thanked her. She lingered for a second, like she wanted to say something more, but didn't. Just gave a small nod and walked away. The flight finally took off, nearly 2 hours behind schedule. In the terminal, more than a few people were watching their screens, seeing a story unfold in real time, while the very subject of it was 30,000 feet above them. By the time Malik landed in Phoenix, he had over 50 unread texts. His mom had called 5 times. His older cousin sent him a screenshot of an article from a local paper already picking up the story. Passengers' video sparks debate over airline racial bias. At the gate, a Blue Air representative waited for him, a woman in her 30s with a name badge clipped tight and a PR smile that barely held. "Mr. Torrance," she said as he stepped into the terminal, "we'd like to extend our sincerest apologies and offer you a complimentary voucher for future flights." Malik blinked at her. "That's it?" She shifted slightly, still smiling. "We're also reviewing internal protocol." He let that sit for a beat, then asked, "Did you watch the video?" She paused. "Yes." "And you're still standing here offering me a voucher like that fixes something?" The smile cracked a little. "We're taking this very seriously, I assure you." Malik just nodded, not out of agreement. He was done giving people more than they gave him. Back in Oakland, Xavier was on a video call with a panel of legal colleagues and journalists. They'd all seen the footage. Some were angry, some were energized. One called it a teachable moment, but Xavier wasn't in the mood for packaging trauma. This was a quiet kid flying home. You don't get a pat on the back for fixing a mistake you created. Another lawyer on the call asked, "You filing suit?" "Not yet," Xavier said. "I want an admission. Public, not buried in legalese." Meanwhile, in Phoenix, the terminal buzzed with activity. Malik made his way to the connecting gate and noticed a few people glancing at him. Not the usual glances travelers give each other. These were different. Some were sympathetic, some curious. A few just nodded quietly, like they knew. A man in his late 40s approached him near a vending machine. "You Malik Torrance?" he asked. "Yeah," the man offered a hand. "I'm Ronel Burke. I work in education policy. Saw your video. What you did on that plane. That mattered." Malik shook his hand, unsure what to say. You didn't yell. You didn't fold. You held your ground. That's bigger than you think. Ronald walked off before Malik could reply, leaving him with that thought. On the connecting flight to Atlanta, Malik sat by the window again, this time with no issues. No shouting, just the low hum of engines and the occasional crackle of the captain's voice. He stared out at the clouds, phone on airplane mode, finally letting himself breathe. He didn't feel like a hero, just tired. But somewhere deep inside, something had shifted. Not in the world, maybe, but in him. But while Malik tried to slip back into normal life, the world outside was only getting louder, and the headlines were just catching up. By the time Malik landed in Atlanta, his name was everywhere. News alerts, talk shows, hashtags. His story had moved beyond travel blogs and local papers. National outlets picked it up, each one spinning the footage in their own way. Some called it a case of procedural failure. Others went further, calling it what it was: racial bias in real time. His mom, Trina, met him at the airport. She didn't say anything at first, just hugged him long and hard, right there by the baggage claim, cameras be damned. You okay? She finally asked. I'm good, Malik answered. Not great, but good. Enough to keep going. They drove home in silence. Not the awkward kind. Just the kind where neither of them wanted to fill the space with words that wouldn't fix anything. When they pulled into the driveway, his mom cut the engine but didn't move. Your uncle called. He said you handled it better than some lawyers he's worked with. Malik gave a faint smile. He told me not to say anything after I called him. So I just didn't. Trina looked at him carefully. That's not easy, being still when someone's coming for you like that. I didn't want to give her a reason. Malik said. No, baby, she replied. You gave her a chance. She just showed everyone who she already was. Inside the house, Malik found his little sister had made him a welcome back sign out of construction paper. She didn't really understand what had happened, just that something was different. His phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from old friends, classmates, teachers, even a few people he hadn't talked to in years suddenly reaching out like they'd always been close. He turned it off and set it face down. At school the next week, things felt strange. Everyone looked at him a second too long. Some gave him high fives, others asked if he was that kid from the plane. One teacher awkwardly pulled him aside. If you ever want to talk about what happened, my door's open. But Malik didn't want to be a symbol. He didn't ask for that. He just wanted to sit down somewhere without someone doubting he belonged. Back in Oakland, Xavier declined every interview. He didn't need airtime. He wanted accountability. Blue Air released a statement, polished, corporate, and full of strategic language. They called it a miscommunication, promised to review internal conduct protocols, and thanked Malik Torrance for his grace and cooperation. No apology, no name, no ownership. Xavier wrote a response himself and published it through a legal journal. What happened to my nephew was not a miscommunication. It was a clear reflection of who gets the benefit of the doubt and who doesn't. It was a reminder that too many young black boys are treated like threats before they open their mouths. My nephew was calm, polite, patient. That didn't protect him. What protected him was a phone call, and that should disturb every single person reading this. The piece went viral in less than 24 hours. Blue Air's stock dipped the next morning. Meanwhile, Malik tried to live normally, but people didn't let him. He was now the kid from the plane, whether he wanted to be or not. Still, something stuck with him, something he hadn't expected. The support. Not just from friends and family, but strangers. People from other states. Other kids his age. Adults who saw their own stories in his silence. Letters arrived in the mail. Handwritten ones. A woman in Pittsburgh wrote, "My son is only 12, and I pray he grows up with the same strength you showed." A retired teacher from Kansas wrote, "You didn't just speak up, you showed up. That matters." Malik didn't write back to all of them. He didn't know what to say yet, but he kept the letters in a box under his bed. But while others were busy labeling him a hero, Malik was just beginning to figure out what it meant to carry a story that didn't feel like it was ever supposed to be his. A few weeks after the incident, life started moving again. Malik wasn't in the headlines anymore. News cycles moved on. The social media noise faded. But the story stayed with people, the ones who really saw it for what it was. At school, Malik had learned to walk through the hallways without reacting to whispers. He focused on his classes, kept showing up, kept doing the work. His GPA hadn't slipped, even though the pressure had nearly broken his focus more than once. What surprised him most were the quiet conversations, not the performative ones, the real ones. One day in history class, a kid he barely knew tapped him on the shoulder after everyone else had left. "I was on a flight last weekend," he said. "Guy behind me started yelling about his seat, and the flight attendant didn't say a word, just smiled and helped him." Malik didn't say anything. "I thought about you the whole time," the kid added. Another time, a janitor, Mr. Daniels, who'd worked at the school for years, caught Malik by the vending machines. "You made me proud, young man. Most people don't stay calm when the fire's right in their face." Malik looked up. "It didn't feel like calm. It felt like holding my breath." Mr. Daniels nodded. "Still counts." Malik started writing again. Nothing big, just in a notebook. Journaling, getting thoughts out of his head so they wouldn't keep circling. Sometimes he wrote about that day. Sometimes he didn't. But it helped. Xavier checked in every week. "You want to go public with this again?" He'd ask. "We can push for policy, training, even settlements," but Malik kept saying no. At least for now. He didn't want to be used by people chasing clout. He didn't want to be packaged. He just wanted to live. Still, the weight of it didn't disappear. Being the kid who made the call came with something heavier than attention. Expectation. People wanted him to speak, to lead, to carry. But he wasn't a movement. He was a teenager trying to graduate and maybe go to Howard, like his uncle. And yet, he couldn't ignore how things had changed. Not just for him, but for people who saw themselves in him. So, one night, sitting in his room, Malik opened a new blank document on his laptop and typed, "Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is stay calm when someone wants you to break." He didn't post it. He just saved it. For now. Because maybe the lesson wasn't about turning into a leader overnight. Maybe it was about recognizing what you carry, how you carry it, and knowing you're not alone. Maybe it was about having someone to call, and being someone others can call when they need to. Maybe it was about speaking up, even when your voice shakes, and showing that silence can still carry power if it's laced with truth. People said Malik changed that day, but he hadn't. He'd just revealed something the world didn't expect to see. Not anger, not defiance, just quiet, steady clarity in the face of ignorance. And sometimes that's enough to rattle the walls. If you've made it this far, thank you. Stories like Malik's happen more often than we know, but not everyone has someone like Xavier on the other end of the line. If this story meant something to you, share it. Talk about it. Ask yourself how you'd act if it happened in front of you, because sometimes change starts with who decides to stand, or sit, in the right seat. And if you believe more people need to hear stories like this, don't forget to subscribe.